Welcome back to the Stories of Northern Life podcast, brought to you by the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. I'm your host, Nicole, and today I am going to be talking about homes that had names here in the Sault. So as I said, we are going to be looking at homes that used to have names here in the Sault, and most of them are, I think, gone, but then some of them are still around. So there are two Sault Star articles that I found that have helped me in finding these homes and even sometimes how they got their names. So the first one we have is from 1905. So the first home that we have that has a name is Montfermier. So not sure how many of you have heard of that one before, but that used to be Mr. Clerg's home, or the home that his parents had. So in 1905, it is saying that Mr. and Mrs. J.H. Clerg were sitting on the brow of the hill at the head of John Street, which overlooked the Sault. So I've been trying to find exactly where this home was, and it seems impossible looking at all our directories. I can't find an address. So I don't know exactly where it is. There's a lot of theories behind it, but it's sort of one of the Sault Ste. Marie mysteries of where exactly this house was. But here's what the article says anyway. This is the name of the splendid home of Mr. and Mrs. J.H. Clerg on the brow of the hill which overlooks the Sault and commands a view of the river for miles. The word is made up of mount, meaning mount or hill, and fermier, which is tenant. The significance of Montfermier, therefore, is a hill dweller or something of the sort. And then if we are looking in the 1912 article, it's saying this is the home of Mr. and Mrs. Talbot and family. So by 1912, the home had changed hands. And so maybe around 1911, the Clark family sort of moved out and the Talbots moved in. It's basically just saying that the house is at the head of John Street in what was Steelton. So if it's saying it's at the head of the street, it's probably at the end, and that would have been near Conmee at the time. So somewhere maybe around John Street and Conmee. Not sure. That's just one guess. Next up, we have Lyndhurst. So this one, if you maybe remember me talking about my episode on the hospitals in the Sault, you might have heard me mention Lyndhurst before. So this was the home of the Plummer family, and it was located on Queen Street. And this is the home that the children of the Plumbers actually donated to the public hospital campaign group. So at the time, there was the General Hospital, which was more a Catholic hospital because it was being run by the nuns. And then another group was trying to set up a sort of public hospital that that was more, I guess, Protestant, you can say, or didn't even really have a denomination. And they had set up the Royal Victoria Hospital, but it was getting too small. So the Plummer family donated the home, with the stipulation that the name of the hospital was to be changed to the Plummer Memorial Public Hospital. And as you know, that happened. So the home was located right where the Plummer Hospital is today. So the building that has now been converted into the condo, so that main section of the Plummer Hospital, was right just to the east of the home. So the Plummer family home, Lyndhurst, it was right tucked up next to it, a little bit closer to where the doctor's building is today. Then we have Saint Marie. And so Saint Marie is Mr. H. Everden's residence in the East End. The name is always spelled as given herewith. And so in 1905, it's saying that was Mr. Everden's, and then by 1912, it is saying that Mr. Sargent lived there. And I believe the home was located around 1066 Queen Street East. It said it was on the north side of Queen and 1 east of Upton. But right there, I'm pretty sure it is gone, as it has been replaced by a number of new homes. Then we have the Clyde. It's on Herrick Street. And it says that it is where Mr. and Mrs. Alan Templeton reside. In Scotland, Mr. Templeton lived beside the famous river, so I'm guessing the Clyde, and after he first came to this country, he lived in a place named after it. And so he actually had a horse livery, and so it was probably a little bit of a bigger property, and I believe the address would have been 3 Herrick Street, but that is now gone and replaced with another sort of apartment building and parking lot. Next off, we have Noatun, meaning by the water, and it's a Norwegian name. Mr. and Mrs. E.A. So just really not sure how to pronounce this. Sjostedt. And so it was their fine home, very appropriately bearing the name by the water. But then by 1912, it's saying that the Davis family was living there. And I believe the address would have been 1077 Queen Street East. And it's saying it was on the south side, 1 east of Upton. So basically right across the street from the home Saint Marie. Then we have Locust Lodge. So at first thought, Locust Lodge doesn't seem a very nice name, but it's described as Locust Lodge is that home-like place on the corner of Wellington and Church Street, where locust hedges are to be seen. Mr. and Mrs. James Bassingthwaighte live here. So it's named after the hedges, so that seems a little bit of a nicer name. And then in 1912, it is still saying that it is the home of the Bassingthwaightes. And I think that the address might have been 823 Wellington Street East, and I believe it is gone now and replaced with a new home. Next up, we have Hillcrest, and so this is on Summit Ave and the Pym Street Hill, and it well describes the home of Dr. and Mrs. Adams. And then in 1912, still saying that Dr. Adams lives there. And with that, I was able to find that the address most likely is 39 Summit. Now, the only tricky thing with that is Summit, or the homes on Summit did go through address changes. So this is taken from when he was living there in 1912. But later on, more in the mid 1900s, they were changing the street numbers on Summit. So I'm not sure if this is still 39 Summit or if the address was then changed. So I'm not exactly sure of the address, but I believe that's the closest one. And also the home is most likely there, seeing as a lot of the homes on Summit are still the old historic homes. So it's saying that it was on the west side of Summit, and it was one west of Pym Street. So that might give you a little bit of an indication of where it is. Next up, we have the Birches. So this is on Pym Street, and it's the home of Mr. and Mrs. Edward Bassingthwaighte. So the last home of the Bassingthwaightes, Locust Lodge, that was James. And so this is Edward. So maybe brothers. I didn't quite look that up. But it says that the name was very fitting. So they probably had a lot of birches around their home. And then if you go over and you look at the birches, it doesn't really seem to describe it in the 1912 article. So maybe the Bassingthwaightes weren't living at that one, and they the next owners decided to not continue on with the name. And I believe the Birches was at 134 Pym Street, and the home could still be there. But I do know around 1920s there was a series of homes that were torn down and replaced on Pym Street. And so this might have been one of them. So it could still be there. Or it could have been replaced. I will let you be the judge of the old historic homes or not. Next up, after the Birches, we have Upton. So everybody probably knows Upton House. This is on 10 Kensington Terrace, and it was the original home of Weymouth Simpson. But here in this 1905 article, I find it interesting. So it says, Upton, Mr. and Mrs. John M. Begg call their home after the estate of Mrs. Begg's father, which was a very important social center in the old days. So I'm not sure if maybe Mr. and Mrs. Begg were the ones to name the home, and the Simpson family hadn't really named their home at all. So this is just sort of one interesting fact I found in my digging. And then in 1912, I do still see that the Begg family was living in Upton House. Next up, we have Ardenvohr. So Ardenvohr, and it means the home of the Campbells. And in 1905, we do see that Mrs. P.C. Campbell was living there. And so this is on Pym Street, and it's actually a Gaelic word to designate her comfortable home. So if we use that, it being on Pym Street, it was describing it as on the west side of Pym and one north of Herrick. I believe the address was 145 Pym Street, and it quite possibly could still be there. And then if we look at the 1912 article, Ardenvohr isn't there either, so I'm not sure if it then later had other owners who also didn't feel like continuing on with the name. Next up, we have Bishophurst. So this one is here. Maybe some of you have even had a tour inside Bishophurst. So every New Year's Day, the Anglican churches open the home up for tours so you can go see Bishophurst. But it is the home of the Anglican bishop in Sault Ste. Marie. So in 1905, that was Bishop Thornlow. And then in 1912, it still seems that Bishop Thornlow is here, and this is the home on Simpson Street. Next up, we have Glee Home. So this is on Pym Street, and it's the name of the residence of Mr. and Mrs. L.A. Green. And then we look over to the 1912 article, and it does appear that the Greens were still living there. So looking at Glee Home, it says that Mrs. Leslie A. Green was living there. It was on the north side of Wellington, 1 west of Church. But it was a little bit hard to find the home of the Greens. They weren't exactly listed as living there in the directory, so it became a little bit of a complication, but it said it was on the north side of Wellington, 1 west of Church. So with that, I think the address might have been 814 Wellington Street, and it might be gone and replaced by new homes as well. Next up, we have Eastbourne. So this is another home that is still around, and it was actually recently just sold, so it will be interesting to see what the new owners do with the building. And it says in 1905, it is the striking residence of Mr. and Mrs. W.H. Hurst. So this is the family that originally owned it, and why it is now a designated heritage property. And so it is at the corners of Queen Street and Leo Avenue, and it refers in its nomenclature to its location at the east end of the town. Now, the only issue with this is the Eastbourne that we know of and we call is actually at the corner of Queen Street and Upton Street. So I'm not entirely sure why it is saying Queen and Leo here and calling it Eastbourne. So there is an old historic home at that corner as well, but the Eastbourne that we always know of and the Eastbourne where the Hurst family lived, we've always seen as at the corner of Queen Street and Upton Street. So that was a little bit confusing. Not too sure. But anyway, moving on, we have the Cedars. So this is the pretty home of Mr. and Mrs. T.A. Hand, and it is on Pym Street. And it says, do not belie its name. Cedars are numerous and well kept. So apparently, yeah, there was a lot of cedars surrounding their home. And in 1912, the Hands were still living there. I believe the address was 148 Pym, and it is quite possible that the building is still there. It was on the east side of Pym Street and 5 north of Queen. And in the directories, I was able to find that the address of the Hands in 1912 was 148 Pym. Next up, we have Glencoe Lodge. So this is at the So this is on Wellington Street, and it says, the trim brick residence of Mr. and Mrs. Jacob Huston is named after Glencoe Town, the former residence of Mr. and Mrs. Huston. And we see that in 1912, the Hustons were still living there. And I believe the address is 639 Wellington, and it is quite possible that that home is still there as well. Then we have Mel Home, and this means sweet home, and it is the name of Mr. and Mrs. R.H. Knight home, and they have given their it to their Bruce Street Hill residence. And then we look, and in 1912, it does appear that the Knights are still living there. I think this home might have been 106 Trelawn Ave, but I believe the home may have been torn down, but I'm not too sure. It is just I haven't quite been able to find the exact residence still standing there. Next up, we have Sunnyside. It's Judge O'Connor's residence on Church Street, and he was still living there in 1912, and I believe it is 151 Woodward Avenue, and I'm pretty sure that it's still there as well. Next up, we have Maple Lodge, and it's the name given by Mr. and Mrs. I.J. Downey to their beautiful home on East Street, and it was surrounded by maple trees. And the Downeys were still living there in 1912. The home, I believe, the address was 132 East Street, but it's no longer there. Another one that is no longer there was also on East Street, and it was called The Gem, and it was the pretty East Street home of Mr. and Mrs. H. Plummer, and it's named after the home of an aunt of Mrs. Plummer in England, and so it would have been right behind what was formerly the bank, and now what was Melio's, now Oja's. And so it would have been located right behind that building at 69 East Street, I believe. And so that home has also been torn down. And even in 1912, they weren't talking about the Gem anymore. Next up, we have Kohler Grove, and it's where Mr. and Mrs. J.C. Richardson live on Kohler Street. Quite a number of well-kept trees adorn the place, and I believe it was 148 Kohler Street, and I think it is still there. Then after that, we have the Belmont. And so Mr. and Mrs. W.A. Quibel's fine residence on Pym Hill. And it surely is a pretty hill, as the name signifies. And so with that, I believe they lived at 35 Summit. But again, as I was saying before, addresses did change, so not sure of the exact address anymore, other than it is on the west side of Summit and 3 east of Boron. So it's possible that it's still there, but again, don't know the current address. Next up, we have The Pines. It is the home of Mr. and Mrs. C.L. Vaughn. And it was on the Bruce Street Hill, and it wasn't listed in the 1912 article, but I believe it was located at 68 Dufferin Street, and again, I believe that it is gone. Next up, we have Haydn's Villa. It's a play up on the words. It is the home of Mr. and Mrs. C.L. Whitby and refers to the fact that the house is almost hidden from view. And I think it was 126 Woodward, and it is quite possible that it is still there as well. And the Whitbys or Whitneys, I'm not too sure. In 1905, it's saying Whitby. In 1912, it's saying Whitney. But I believe it was the same family still living there over those few years. So next up, we have Hillcrest, and it's where Mr. and Mrs. George Wilson live. It's the White House beside Mr. H.C. Hamilton's that shares with it a centennial station on the hill back of the town. So I think this was 8 Boron Street, but I'm not too sure. But I believe this home is also gone now. Then we have Maryborough. Mr. and Mrs. S. Fawcett's home gets its name from the township where Mr. Fawcett was born. And in 1912, it does appear that the Fawcetts were still living there. And I think this address was 145 Church Street, and if so, I believe the home is still there. Then the last one we have from the 1905 article is Bon Accord. So Bon Accord, from the French, it's a name of a model English home, that of Mr. and Mrs. J.H. Hugel on Wellington and March. And in the summertime, it is a flower garden tended with scrupulous care. And so I believe that their home was located at 189 March Street. So then moving on to the rest of the homes from the 1912 article. We have The Hill, and it was the home of Mr. and Mrs. T.S. Atkinson, who lived on the Great Northern Road just at the top of Pym Hill. Now, at the time when they were living there, the address was 63 Great Northern Road, but I believe the address has changed to 267 Pym Street, as their address was described on the west side of Great Northern, one north of Summit, and that now actually puts it on Pym Street rather than Great Northern Road. Then we have Jubilee Cottage. So I have been really trying to find the exact address for this street because it's describing it as the corner of Bay and Elgin Streets. And it was built in Queen Victoria's Jubilee year, so 1912, by Mr. Westcott, who was then lumbering near the Sioux. Okay, so Elgin Street at this time didn't go below Bay. So if it's saying it's at the corner of Bay and Elgin, it's probably on the north side of Bay. But I can't find anything to say that Mr. Westcott was living there, or whoever was living there. I don't really know the address. The best I can say is that it was at the corner of Elgin and Bay, and we do have a picture of the home, so we know that it actually did in fact exist. The directories just don't seem to agree with that. Then lastly, we have Sunset Cottage, and this house was built in 1888 by Mr. Gorby, but then later owned by the Hawkshaws. And I actually think this is my ancestors' home, as they were the Hawkshaws, and my grandma always said that they had a home under the bridge, or what is now the International Bridge, but it's saying this home was next to the International Bridge. So if they're talking about it in 1912 time, they're meaning the International Railway Bridge, which was also built in 1888. So this could be the home, and it would have been torn down when they did construct the other more common international bridge that we know of in the 1960s. So they probably was torn down 1960, 61, as they were completing the bridge in 62, and then officially in 63. So that is all for the homes that have names. Have you heard of any of these names? Are there any other homes with names that you know of? Please share it with us. I hope you liked this episode, and as always, thanks for listening. Bye.
Did you know you can get unlimited admission to the Sault Ste. Marie Museum for a whole year for just $15? Yep, that's right, and there's more perks to that too. Go to Sault Museum, that's SAULT museum.ca, under Visit and learn more about our membership options. And if you're a business, corporate or nonprofit, we have plans for you too. Reach out to us by emailing info@saultmuseum.ca with any inquiries.
Today's quote comes from Views of the Sault by Heather Ingram, illustrated by Graham Smith. This is a quote about Upton House on 10 Kensington Terrace from Jim Wilson, who lived at 4 Kensington Terrace at their family residence for over 75 years. Quote, I can still point to where the apple orchard was and the barn where I swung from a rope to land in the hay below. At 10 Kensington, those happy times of my childhood in the 1940s are something I will never forget. Spent with neighborhood chums, Paul Moore, the Stone brothers, Peter Arnott, the Walker sisters, George Grant, the Greenwood boys and girls, and many others. End quote.